The road was nothing but frozen mud and silence. A grey sky hung low over the shattered fields near Cherbourg, its breath cold enough to sting the lungs. Dozens of German women trudged in a thin column, faces hollow, uniforms torn, eyes empty. Among them, Anna Müller pressed her cracked lips together, each step a quiet surrender to what she could no longer resist. The wind carried the scent of smoke and iron, the remains of battles already lost. A burst of American shouts broke the monotony. Soldiers stood ahead, rifles lowered but ready, their helmets gleaming faintly under the pale light. "Keep moving!" someone barked in accented English. Anna didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. Her legs obeyed before her mind did. When the column finally halted, she dared to lift her gaze. The Americans didn't look like monsters. Some were barely older than she was, tired faces behind mud-streaked cheeks. One of them, tall and quiet, met her eyes briefly before turning away. She couldn't tell if his look carried pity or contempt. A cough tore through her chest. The woman beside her, Helga Stein, muttered, "Don't show weakness." Her voice was raw, the edge of pride still unbroken. Anna nodded faintly, though her strength was fading fast. Around them the countryside stretched in ruins, burned-out farmhouses, dead cattle, ditches filled with broken helmets and forgotten letters. They were herded to a clearing bordered by barbed wire, where trucks idled, engines rumbling like beasts. The air smelled of diesel and wet hay. American soldiers moved efficiently, counting heads, separating ranks. Anna felt the weight of being counted, not as a person but as something surrendered. Inside her coat pocket, she still carried a folded scrap of her brother's last letter from the Eastern Front. The ink had bled from rain, his words blurred but alive in her memory. "Hold your heart, Anna. The world will need kindness again someday." She wondered if that day would ever come. As the women waited, a faint laugh rippled among the soldiers. One of them passed a cigarette to another. Life went on, even here. Anna's stomach twisted, not from hunger but from disbelief that normalcy could exist beside her defeat. She turned her eyes upward, where faint snowflakes began to fall. For the first time in months, the quiet felt almost merciful. War had finally stopped shouting. If you're drawn to stories like this, moments where history isn't about victory but survival, make sure to subscribe. There's more to uncover in the lives hidden behind uniforms and silence. A sergeant called out, "Move out!" The women climbed into trucks, wooden planks creaking beneath their boots. The engine roared, jerking them forward into an uncertain journey. Helga cursed softly in German, clutching her scarf. Anna simply closed her eyes. Through a crack in the truck's side, she glimpsed the countryside slipping away, the same fields that once promised safety, now scarred beyond recognition. Every jolt of the vehicle carried them deeper into foreign hands. She didn't know where they were being taken, or if she'd ever see home again. All she knew was that the war had ended for her, not with glory, but with surrender on a frozen morning. The truck rolled on toward the horizon, and in that endless grey, Anna silently wondered if mercy still existed on the other side of the wire. The truck stopped after hours of silence broken only by the engine's low growl. When the doors opened, light flooded in. Too bright, too clean. Anna blinked, disoriented. Beyond the truck bed stretched a fenced compound, surrounded by rolling green fields and watchtowers. The air smelled different here, less of gunpowder and more of damp grass. It wasn't what she expected from a prison. "Out! Line up!" shouted an American voice. The women obeyed, boots sinking into the soft ground. Their breath came out in small clouds as they stood before a row of guards. One of them, tall and broad-shouldered, carried himself with quiet discipline. His name tag read, Harlan. He scanned their faces without hostility, only fatigue. Helga muttered beside Anna, "They'll make us dig trenches or clean their barracks." Her tone was defiant, but her eyes flickered with uncertainty. Anna said nothing. The barbed wire glinted under a weak sun, and beyond it she saw barracks built from wood, orderly, painted in dull beige. It looked more like a labor camp than a punishment yard. Still, the unease settled deep inside her. A sergeant stepped forward. You'll follow instructions, no trouble, no problems, you'll be treated fair. His accent was southern, his voice dry as dust. Few women understood him, but his tone carried the message. Inside the camp, the women were assigned bunks, clean sheets, metal frames, a small stove at the center of each hut. The ordinary comfort felt suspicious. Anna traced her fingers across the blanket, coarse but warm. Helga scowled. They want to make us forget who we are. Maybe they just don't want us dead, Anna replied quietly. That night, the sounds of the camp drifted through thin walls. Boots on gravel, distant laughter, a harmonica playing something slow and sad. It was strange hearing music again. For months, every melody had been drowned by war. From her bunk, Anna studied the faces around her. Girls barely out of adolescence, women with hair shorn short under faded caps. Some wept quietly into their sleeves. Others stared into nothing, the same blank surrender she'd felt that morning. When the door creaked open, Corporal Harlan appeared, holding a clipboard. His blue eyes met Anna's for a fleeting moment before moving on. "Tomorrow," he said, slow enough for them to catch a word or two. "Work assignments." Then he nodded and left. Helga leaned toward Anna. "Did you see how he looked at you?" Anna frowned. "Like a guard." Helga smirked faintly. "Like a man." The remark stung, not because of its meaning, but because it reminded Anna of what humanity used to feel like. That simple exchange of glances had carried something she hadn't felt in months: acknowledgement. As the stove crackled, she lay awake, listening to the wind rattle the barracks. Somewhere outside, a dog barked and was answered by another. The rhythm of a world still alive. For the first time since surrendering, Anna wondered if this captivity might be more complicated than chains and fences. In the dark, Helga whispered, "They think we're safe here." Anna closed her eyes. "Safe," she murmured, uncertain if she believed it. The camp slept under a thin veil of mist, and beyond the wire the fields swayed gently, free, untouched, and impossibly close. Morning light seeped through the thin curtains of the barracks, turning the damp air golden. Anna woke to the smell of boiled oats and disinfectant, her stomach tightening with both hunger and suspicion. The camp had a rhythm now: bugle, roll call, work, silence, but no one truly understood what was said. Words drifted past them like water through wire. When the guard shouted commands, Anna could only guess by gestures. "Line up!" sounded like a growl of foreign sounds. Some women hesitated, others mimicked the rest, afraid to stand out. One American, a broad man with freckles, mocked their accents whenever they tried to reply. His laughter stung more than his orders. Helga muttered in German, "They treat us like fools." Anna answered softly, "Maybe we are fools for not understanding." The guard snapped something again, his voice sharp. Anna froze, heart pounding, until another man, Corporal Harlan, stepped forward. He repeated the command slowly, pointing toward the kitchen tent, then at her. "You. Help. Food," he said. His tone wasn't cruel. He made the words sound patient, deliberate. Anna nodded, realizing she was being assigned to kitchen duty. Helga shot her a look, half pity, half envy. Inside the kitchen tent, the air was thick with steam and metal. Pots clanged, voices overlapped, and the smell of soup filled the space. American cooks moved efficiently, ignoring the German women who stumbled through tasks. Anna tried to understand the rhythm, mimicking motions, watching carefully. "Water," said a soldier, pointing to a bucket. She frowned, not sure what he meant. He repeated, "Water," tapping the rim. "Wasser," she murmured, touching the same spot. He smiled faintly. "Yes, water." Then he pointed at himself. "Jimmy." She hesitated before replying, "Anna." The name exchange hung between them, fragile as glass. It wasn't friendship, only a small bridge made of two words. Later, carrying bowls back to the barracks, Anna felt the strange pull of pride. She had understood something, however small. But that pride vanished when another guard, overhearing her speak broken English, sneered, "You trying to sweet-talk your way out, Fräulein?" His tone dripped with suspicion. "I only learn," she said carefully, her accent heavy. He laughed. Learn. You'll be lucky they send you home, sweetheart. His words pierced deeper than she expected. Back inside, Helga noticed her quiet. They humiliate us because they can, she said bitterly. Maybe not all, Anna replied. One tried to teach me. Helga's brows tightened. Don't be fooled. They want obedience, not peace. That night Anna lay awake, replaying the sounds in her mind. Water, bucket, Jimmy. Each syllable felt like a seed buried in soil too cold to bloom. The barrier between their worlds wasn't just words. It was history, loss and guilt layered thick like the mud beneath their boots. Outside, footsteps passed by, muffled voices speaking in that steady, alien rhythm. She wondered if they mocked her, or simply lived their lives unaware that the women behind the wire were listening, trying to decipher the shape of mercy in another language. When the wind rose, the tents trembled softly. Anna whispered to herself the words she had learned, repeating them into the dark until they became her lullaby. Somewhere beyond the fence, a man named Jimmy might be doing the same, remembering her name, just as uncertain, just as human. The new uniforms arrived in the back of a supply truck, neatly folded khaki shirts and plain trousers, marked POW. The women stood in line as an American officer read names from a clipboard. One by one they exchanged what remained of their tattered German attire for the coarse, unfamiliar fabric. When Anna received hers, she hesitated before unfolding it. It smelled faintly of soap and metal, nothing like the wool that had once symbolized duty and pride. Helga muttered, "They strip us of everything, even who we are." Anna slipped into the new clothes without answering. The fabric scratched against her skin, but there was something strangely liberating about it. No insignia, no rank, no allegiance, just cloth meant to cover, not to command. For the first time, she wasn't a soldier or an enemy. She was simply a woman trying to survive. In the barracks, the women murmured in low tones, adjusting to the change. Some cried quietly, clutching at the uniforms as if they could somehow reclaim their dignity by hating them. Others sat still, staring at their hands, the weight of silence pressing heavier than the garments themselves. Helga tore off the tag that said, POW. "I won't wear their mark," she said, tossing it aside. Anna bent to pick it up. "It's only fabric, Helga. It doesn't know who you are." Helga's voice sharpened. "It's a reminder. They won, and we belong to them now." The words hung in the air, bitter and true. Anna folded the tag into her pocket, unsure why she wanted to keep it. Maybe as proof of what she'd become, or what she still refused to be. Later that day, an American medic entered the barracks for inspection. He checked hands, feet, and faces, recording notes in a small notebook. When he reached Anna, his expression softened. "You radio operator?" he asked slowly, pointing to her ear, then mimicking turning a dial. She nodded. Surprised, he guessed. "Yes." "Radio?" He smiled faintly. "My sister, same work." Then he scribbled something and moved on. The brief exchange unsettled her. These men, who had fought against everything she once believed in, now treated her wounds, handed her clothes, spoke of sisters. It was easier when enemies were faceless. That night Anna wrote in her small journal, hiding it beneath her mattress. Her handwriting trembled as she wrote in German, "I used to wear the eagle on my shoulder. Now I wear nothing. Maybe that is what freedom feels like, weightless and frightening." Across the room, Helga was still awake, staring at the ceiling. "You think they pity us?" she asked quietly. Anna turned toward her. "Maybe they pity themselves for needing to." The stove hissed softly as the fire died. Outside, the camp settled into silence, broken only by the occasional crunch of boots on gravel. The wind slipped through cracks in the wood, cool and restless, carrying the faint scent of the English countryside. Anna touched the sleeve of her new uniform. It felt heavy again, but not because of its fabric. It carried the burden of what she had been and the uncertainty of who she might become. As sleep pulled her under, one thought lingered in her mind. Perhaps losing everything was the only way to learn what truly remained. Morning mist clung to the camp like a thin veil when the sound of boots echoed across the yard. The women gathered instinctively, their breath forming pale clouds in the cold. Anna stood beside Helga, watching a group of American officers approach, flanked by guards. Inspections were never good news, yet something in the men's posture, less rigid, almost casual, felt different this time. One officer, his uniform pressed and polished, stopped before their line. "Ladies," he began, the word strange coming from the mouth of an enemy. "You will be checked for supplies, then returned to duty. No fear." His tone was measured, almost formal. Most women didn't understand him, but the calm in his voice softened their shoulders. Helga whispered, "He called us ladies." Mockery. Anna shook her head. Or courtesy. The inspection began. An American medic asked each woman to extend her hands, checking for frostbite and infection. When he reached Anna, his gloves brushed lightly against her skin. "Good," he murmured, almost to himself. He offered her a small tin of salve, gesturing toward her cracked knuckles. She hesitated, uncertain if it was a trick. "For you," he said again. "Use." She accepted it silently. The ointment smelled faintly of menthol, oddly comforting. Helga's eyes narrowed, distrustful. "You see? They pretend kindness so we forget who took our homes." Anna didn't reply. The warmth of the tin in her palm spoke louder than any argument. Later that afternoon, the women were gathered near the canteen for supplies. 2 guards distributed blankets, each folded neatly. The fabric was coarse but new, and the act itself, organized, almost respectful, spread confusion through the ranks. Whispers rippled among them. "Do they know we're prisoners?" someone murmured. "Maybe they think we're civilians." Anna caught Jimmy Harlan watching her again. His expression was unreadable, caught between duty and something gentler. When she met his eyes, he looked away quickly, pretending to adjust his rifle strap. The sun broke through the clouds, pale and cold, turning the camp fences into lines of gold. For a fleeting moment, everything looked less like captivity and more like order, structured, bearable. Helga, still defiant, muttered, "They can polish the cage, Anna. It's still a cage." "Maybe," Anna said softly, "but they could have made it colder." That evening, while distributing rations, Jimmy passed by her table. "Cold night coming," he said, tapping the edge of the soup pot. "Eat all." Anna nodded, unsure how to respond. "Thank you," she managed, her accent thick. His brows lifted slightly, as if surprised she spoke. "You're welcome," he replied, then turned away before anyone noticed. As the women ate, Anna watched the guards share cigarettes, their laughter drifting like smoke above the wire. It was strange how human sound could still exist in a place meant for punishment. She wondered if that was mercy or mockery disguised as kindness. Later, when lights went out, she rubbed the salve into her hands. The scent lingered, reminding her of something far away, her mother's garden after rain when life still felt ordinary. Helga rolled over, whispering, "Tomorrow they'll take something else from us." Anna stared into the darkness. "Maybe," she said quietly, "but today they gave something back." The thought unsettled her, yet she clung to it as the night deepened, a fragile act of defiance disguised as hope. By late summer, the camp had settled into a rhythm that felt almost civilized. The days began with the clang of the morning bell, followed by lines of women waiting for assignments. Anna was placed in the camp kitchen, while others tended the gardens or washed uniforms. The routines dulled the fear, turning captivity into something that looked, from a distance, like order. Steam rose from the soup pots as Anna stirred, the smell of barley and onions filling the air. Around her, other women worked in silence, ladling broth into tin bowls. The Americans passed occasionally, checking lists, their boots crunching against the gravel outside. The tension between captor and captive still lived in every glance, but it was softer now, worn down by repetition and necessity. Jimmy appeared at the tent entrance, his sleeves rolled to his elbows. "Morning, Anna," he said carefully, his English slow and clear, as though speaking across a fragile bridge. "Good morning," she replied, the words still foreign on her tongue. He nodded toward the steaming pot. "Smells good." She smiled faintly. "Too much salt," she said, shaking her head. He laughed. a low, quick sound that seemed out of place in a prisoner's camp. For a moment it startled her. He wasn't laughing at her. He was laughing with her. When he left, Helga leaned over the counter. "You shouldn't talk to him," she warned. "They watch." "I know," Anna said, keeping her eyes on the ladle. "But he talks like a person, not a guard." Helga scoffed. "They talk kindly, so we behave. Don't mistake control for care." Anna didn't answer. Yet when she served the guards their lunch that day, she caught Jimmy's quiet nod of thanks. It was nothing, a courtesy, a flicker of respect, but it settled deep in her chest, a warmth she couldn't explain. In the afternoons, the women were allowed to walk near the fence, under watch. The English countryside stretched endlessly, green hills, tall grass bending in the wind, and beyond that, freedom they could see but not touch. Anna would sit near the edge, tracing shapes in the dirt with a stick, whispering English words she'd learned. Bread, sky, thank you. Each one carried a strange kind of power. Helga often joined her but never looked beyond the wire. "It's easier," she said once, "if you pretend there's nothing out there." Anna looked at the horizon. "I can't. I need to believe something exists beyond this." That night, after curfew, laughter drifted faintly from the guard station. A radio played a swing tune, lively and bright. The melody seeped through the quiet barracks, making the prisoners restless. Some hummed softly, others turned away, unwilling to let the music touch them. Anna lay awake, listening. The song reminded her of a cafe in Munich years ago, before uniforms and orders and borders. She closed her eyes and mouthed the tune silently, each note a small rebellion against the silence of war. Outside, the guards laughed again. Inside, Anna whispered to herself, "Too much salt," and smiled at the absurdity of it. The next morning she would wake to the same bell, the same work, the same faces. But something inside her had shifted, small and invisible, a rhythm returning, the faint taste of ordinary life. The morning began with whispers. They slid through the barracks like wind under the door, carried by half-understood words and anxious glances. Someone claimed the war might end soon. Someone else swore they'd overheard an American officer mention surrender. No one knew what to believe, yet the air buzzed with cautious hope. Anna ladled porridge into bowls, her motions automatic, her mind elsewhere. Around her, voices rose and fell, German mixed with scattered English. "He said Berlin's fallen," one woman insisted. "No, it was something about Italy," another argued. Hope was a dangerous thing. It spread faster than hunger and burned longer than despair. Helga slammed her spoon on the table. "Fools!" she snapped. "Rumors make prisoners forget their chains." Anna met her gaze quietly. "Maybe it helps them breathe." Helga shook her head. "Hope is the cruelest lie. Don't feed it." She turned away, but the tremor in her voice betrayed the fear she was hiding. Later that day, Anna was ordered to sweep the yard near the supply shed. The sun hung low, turning the barbed wire into lines of silver. A group of American soldiers stood nearby, speaking in low tones. Their laughter broke briefly, replaced by serious voices. Anna caught fragments. End of it. Germany. Transfer. Words that struck her like sudden light through fog. She paused, pretending to adjust her broom. Jimmy stepped out of the group, noticing her hesitation. "You work too hard," he said lightly. Anna straightened, wary. "I listen," she admitted, pointing to her ear. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "News travels fast," he said, "but not all of it's true." Her heart quickened. "End?" she asked softly, searching his eyes. He exhaled, lowering his voice. "Maybe soon." The words were simple, but they rippled through her like thunder. When he walked away, she felt the weight of them settle deep in her chest. Maybe soon. That evening, the barracks hummed with nervous energy. Some women sang softly, voices trembling with something close to joy. Others sat apart, guarded, afraid to hope too openly. The guard lights flickered on outside, their glow falling through the small windows like a reminder. The war might end, but the fences still stood. Helga sat on her bunk, arms crossed. "Even if it's true, do you think they'll let us go?" Anna hesitated. "Wouldn't you want to believe they might?" "I want to believe I'll wake up and not smell fear anymore," Helga said bitterly, but belief doesn't make truth. Anna touched the small notebook hidden under her pillow, where she'd written fragments of English words, each one a seed for a future she didn't yet understand. Sometimes, she said softly, belief is the only thing left to practice. The night grew colder, the camp quieter. Outside, guards murmured by the gate, their shadows long and wavering under the lamps. Anna lay awake, staring at the roof above her. If the war was truly ending, what would remain of them once the fighting stopped? The question haunted her as the wind carried the echo of distant laughter. American voices, warm and carefree. Freedom, she thought, must sound like that. Sleep came slowly, fragile as the rumors that had filled the day. And somewhere beyond the wire, history itself was turning, though none of them could yet see which way. The afternoon sun pressed heavy over the camp, a rare warmth that softened even the cold steel of the fences. The air was still except for the faint hum of insects and the distant rumble of a truck. The women stood in the yard, squinting toward the gate as American soldiers unloaded large metal containers, packed with ice and something pale beneath it. Murmurs spread quickly. Food, medicine, punishment. No one could tell. Anna shielded her eyes. "What are they doing?" she asked quietly. Helga crossed her arms. "Another inspection, maybe. Or they're feeding the guards again." But the men began to set up tables instead, calling for buckets, scoops, and cups. The air filled with a sweet, milky scent, foreign, confusing. A soldier shouted a single word that none of the prisoners recognized. "Ice cream." The women exchanged puzzled looks. A few laughed nervously. Others frowned, unwilling to believe this was for them. One guard, grinning, pointed to the tubs and motioned for them to approach. The group hesitated, suspicion holding them still. Jimmy appeared near the front, waving gently. "Come on," he said, repeating the word slower this time. "Ice cream for you." Anna froze. "For us?" she whispered, the word tasting strange. He nodded. "Yes, you. Eat." The disbelief rippled through the group like a current. Helga scoffed under her breath. "They mock us, feeding prisoners like children." Yet her voice trembled, betraying her uncertainty. Anna stepped forward cautiously, her hands trembling as she accepted the paper cup Jimmy offered. Inside it sat a pale mound beginning to melt in the sun. She stared at it, the cold vapor rising faintly, unsure if this was kindness or cruelty in disguise. Jimmy gave a small nod. "Eat," he encouraged. She raised the spoon to her lips. The first taste was shocking, a burst of sweetness and cold that numbed her tongue, her throat, her thoughts. For a moment, she forgot the barbed wire, the orders, the weight of loss. It was just milk, sugar, and cream, but it tasted like another world. Helga glared at her. "Don't," she hissed. "It's their game." Anna swallowed, eyes wet. "Then let me lose," she said softly. Other women began to step forward, curiosity overtaking pride. Soon the yard filled with soft laughter, hesitant at first, then freer, as they tasted something that felt impossibly human. The guards seemed almost embarrassed by their own generosity, looking away as if afraid to witness the effect of it. A young prisoner near the back whispered, "Do they know we're prisoners?" The question drifted across the group, half joke, half plea. Jimmy overheard it, but said nothing. His gaze met Anna's instead, quiet and steady. The ice cream melted fast under the sun, dripping down the edges of the cups, leaving sticky trails on the women's fingers. But none of them cared. They savored each spoonful, as if it were proof that the world hadn't completely forgotten how to be kind. When the buckets were empty, the soldiers began collecting the cups. The laughter faded, replaced by silence again, but something lingered in the air. Fragile, uncertain warmth. Anna looked at her empty cup, then at Jimmy, who gave her a small, almost shy smile. She wanted to say thank you, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she whispered to herself, "Maybe they do know." That night, the sweetness lingered like a ghost. Even after the taste had faded, Anna could still feel it, cold against her tongue, soft in her memory. The camp seemed quieter than usual, as if the laughter of the afternoon had stolen the air's usual weight. Yet beneath the silence, something uneasy stirred. Helga sat on her bunk, her untouched cup still resting beside her. The ice cream had melted hours ago, a pale puddle gone warm and useless. "You see?" she said, her tone sharp. "They make us forget, even for a minute, that's the trick." Anna looked at her hands. "I didn't forget," she answered softly. "I remembered how it feels to be human." Helga turned away. "You're dreaming. Kindness is another form of control." But Anna wasn't so sure. The memory of Jimmy's expression, gentle, awkward, real, kept returning. There had been no control in it, only confusion, like hers. Outside, the guards walked their rounds, boots crunching softly against the gravel. The moonlight shimmered off the fence, silver lines separating everything they were from everything they wished to be. Somewhere near the gate, an American voice hummed faintly, off-key but tender. The sound made Anna's chest ache. She lay back, staring at the rafters. Each woman in the barracks carried her own silence differently. Some clung to defiance, others to fatigue. But that day had cracked something open, a small, dangerous space where hope could breathe. When morning came, the usual bitterness returned. The clang of the breakfast bell, the orders shouted in English, the endless routine of captivity. Yet something in the air had changed. Women exchanged glances instead of glares. A few even smiled as they lined up for work detail. The guards, perhaps noticing, seemed gentler too, their voices less harsh, their commands less cruel. Helga walked beside Anna, her expression unreadable. "You think one spoon of sugar changes a war?" "No," Anna said, "but maybe it changes what we remember about it." They reached the laundry area where steam filled the air, carrying the scent of soap and damp fabric. The routine was familiar, scrub, rinse, hang, but Anna felt lighter somehow, her movements less mechanical. At midday, she caught sight of Jimmy across the yard, speaking with another guard. When their eyes met, he nodded once, almost imperceptibly. She wanted to wave, but didn't. Some lines were still too dangerous to cross. Helga followed her gaze. "You should be careful," she warned. "He'll forget you when orders change." Anna smiled faintly. "Maybe, but for now he remembers." The rest of the day passed in a blur of small sounds, footsteps, voices, the distant call of crows. When the sun began to sink, the camp turned gold again, the same shade it had been when the ice cream first appeared. Anna sat outside the barracks watching the light fade. She thought of home, of her brother's letter folded deep in her pocket, of the strange kindness that could exist even inside a fence. The taste had gone, but its echo remained. Sweetness, she realized, could be a kind of rebellion too. As night settled, she whispered into the still air, half to herself, half to no one, "Maybe mercy doesn't need to be explained." The days that followed fell into an uneasy calm. The air carried the scent of damp soil and autumn leaves, and the nights grew colder, sharper. Anna sat at a small wooden table near the back of the barracks, her journal open before her. The thin paper trembled under her hand as she began to write, not in the secret code of a soldier, but in the voice of a daughter. "Dear Mother," she wrote in careful German, "I am alive, though I no longer know what that means. The Americans feed us well. They treat us with a kind of politeness that hurts more than cruelty. I wish I could tell you that I understand it." She paused, staring at the ink as it bled into the fibers. The words felt too heavy, too intimate to send. Letters were collected and censored anyway, most never reaching home. "Still," she wrote, as if each word could keep her tethered to something real. Helga walked past, glancing down. "Writing fairy tales again?" she asked dryly. Anna smiled faintly. "Memories," she said. "They're safer on paper." Helga sat across from her, rubbing her arms for warmth. "You think your mother wants to hear about this place. Better she thinks you're dead than see you humiliated." "I'd rather she knows I'm still trying," Anna replied. Helga said nothing more. Outside, voices called for evening roll, but Anna kept her head bent over the page. Later that night, as she slipped the folded letter into the pocket of her coat, she noticed Jimmy standing near the entrance of the barracks. His breath hung in the chill, forming little clouds that drifted upward and disappeared. "You write," he said, gesturing toward the paper in her hand. "Yes," Anna answered, unsure whether to hide it or not. "Home?" he asked. She nodded. "My mother." He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small stack of envelopes, American ones, worn and smudged. "Mine," he said. "From my sister. Hard to read here." Anna studied his face, seeing the same tiredness she felt in herself. For a moment the wire between them seemed invisible. "Do you answer her?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said. "Sometimes I just read them again." Their eyes met in quiet understanding. He handed her a sheet of paper and a stub of a pencil. "Here," he said softly. "Write more. Maybe one day you send it." She took it carefully, her fingers brushing his for a fraction of a second. "Thank you," she whispered. When he left, she sat back down and unfolded the new paper. Her heart felt strange, lighter but aching. She began again. "Dear Mother, today an American gave me paper. It sounds like nothing, but it meant everything. Maybe kindness is a language no one taught us before." The words spilled easily this time, simple and true. She didn't sign the letter, only folded it and tucked it under her pillow. It might never reach Bavaria, but it existed, and that was enough. As she drifted towards sleep, she thought of Jimmy's letters, his sister's handwriting fading under his fingertips. The thought comforted her in a way she couldn't explain. Across the camp, a light flickered out, and the night settled again, quiet, fragile, and full of things left unsent. The news arrived not with trumpets, but with whispers. It spread like the wind through the camp, quick, quiet, unbelievable. "The war is over," someone said in German. Then again, louder, "Germany surrendered." For a moment, no one moved. The words hung in the cold air, too heavy to trust. Anna felt her stomach tighten. "Over?" she whispered to herself, the words strange, almost forbidden. Helga stood beside her, pale and rigid. "Lies," she muttered. "It can't end like this." Not with silence. But the guards' faces told another story. Their usual briskness had softened. Orders were shorter, voices quieter. Some even smiled faintly, though their eyes carried something like pity. When Jimmy passed by, he nodded once, just enough for Anna to understand it was true. That evening, the prisoners gathered outside the barracks. The sky was streaked with orange and violet, the air thick with disbelief. A few women wept openly. Others stared at their hands as if waiting for them to change. Anna's heart raced, not with joy but confusion. If the war was over, what were they now? Soldiers without a cause, prisoners without a sentence. Helga clenched her fists. "They'll make us pay. Every one of us, don't you see? They'll call us guilty." Anna's voice trembled. "Maybe we are." Helga turned sharply. "Don't say that." Anna met her eyes. "I just mean, maybe everyone lost something. Even them." Before Helga could answer, an American officer called for attention. "Ladies," he began, speaking slowly so they could follow. "The war in Europe has ended. You will remain here until further notice. You are safe." The word safe fell into the crowd like a stone into water. Small ripples, no applause. Safe didn't mean free. It didn't bring back homes, families, or time. Still, it was the first word in months that didn't sound like a command. That night the camp was quieter than ever. No laughter, no arguments. Only breathing, the kind that came from people unsure how to exist without fear. Anna lay awake, staring at the faint light spilling through the window slats. Somewhere outside, a radio played an American song, a melody slow and mournful, like the closing of a long, painful chapter. She thought of her mother, of Bavaria, of streets she might never see again. She thought of Jimmy, too, and how he had looked at her differently that afternoon, not as a prisoner, but as someone whose story had reached its turning point. The next morning, the guards allowed them to walk longer in the yard. The air smelled of rain, earth, and something new, possibility maybe. Anna picked up a fallen leaf, its edges soft and damp. She turned it in her hand, marveling at its fragility. Helga approached, her voice low. "So this is it, the end of everything?" Anna shook her head. "No, maybe the beginning of something else." Helga's eyes softened for the first time in weeks. "And what do you think comes next?" Anna looked toward the fence where the sunlight caught on the wire. "I don't know," she said. "But I want to find out." For the first time, the horizon didn't look like a boundary. It looked like a question waiting to be answered. The sky hung low, a heavy sheet of grey pressing down on the camp. Weeks had passed since the surrender, and now the gates no longer felt like barriers but borders waiting to dissolve. Trucks arrived each morning, their engines rumbling like uncertain promises. Names were called, papers checked, hands shaken. One by one the women left. Anna stood near the barracks door, clutching her journal. Her turn hadn't come yet, but she knew it would soon. The air smelled of mud and exhaust, and somewhere behind her, Helga was folding the few clothes she still owned. "They're sending people back in groups," Helga said, her voice steady but hollow. "I heard some will go home next week." Anna nodded, though the word home no longer carried shape or color in her mind. What did home mean after everything? Bombed streets, missing faces, silence where laughter used to be. When she stepped outside, Jimmy was by the trucks checking lists. His uniform looked neater than usual, as if he'd tried to hide the fatigue beneath layers of order. He noticed her and gave a small nod. "You'll be leaving soon," he said. "So they tell me," Anna replied. He hesitated, glancing around before speaking again. "You'll be safe. Germany's rebuilding." She smiled faintly. "Safe is a word I still don't know what to do with." He rubbed the back of his neck, searching for something to say. "You deserve peace," he managed finally. Anna looked down, tracing circles in the dirt with her shoe. "And you? What will you do when we're gone?" He shrugged. "Go home, I guess. Try to forget this place." Their eyes met, the air between them heavy with all the words they couldn't say. Gratitude, confusion, the fragile, forbidden thread that had tied them together through silence and small mercies. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded page, the letter she'd never sent. "For you," she said softly. "Not to keep, just to read." He took it carefully, his fingers brushing hers. "What does it say?" "That I was treated as a person," she replied, "and that mattered." He nodded once, swallowing hard. "I'll remember that." A shout came from across the yard, another group ready for departure. The moment tightened like the last breath before goodbye. Anna drew in the cold air, memorizing everything. The smell of wet grass, the dull clang of metal, the distant murmur of women preparing to leave. "Goodbye, Jimmy," she said. "Goodbye, Anna." No handshake, no wave. Just a silence too full to bear. Back in the barracks, Helga was waiting. "So, did you thank your American friend?" Anna sat on her bunk, folding her hands over her journal. "Yes," she said quietly, "and I think he thanked me too." Outside, the trucks began to move, their wheels churning through the mud. The camp gates creaked open, and a gust of cold air swept through, carrying with it the scent of distant rain and something that almost felt like freedom. Anna closed her eyes, letting the sound of the engines fade. Tomorrow, her name might be called. Tomorrow she would step beyond the wire for the first time in months. She didn't know where she was going, but for once the not knowing didn't frighten her. The train crawled across the border into Germany beneath a sky the color of ash. Through the cracked window, Anna saw what remained of her country, towns flattened into silence, fields burned black, rails twisted like old bones. The air smelled of soot and something worse, the residue of too many endings. Around her, the women sat quietly, clutching what little they owned. No one spoke. Words felt useless in the face of so much ruin. When the train stopped near Nuremberg, they were told to disembark. Anna stepped onto the platform, her boots sinking into dust. The station had no roof, no walls, just the skeleton of what once had been. A man passed by pushing a cart filled with bricks, his face hollow, eyes blank. The war might have ended, but the wreckage was still breathing. Helga walked beside her, her voice low. "Home," she said bitterly. "You still recognize it?" Anna looked around. Not yet. They found temporary shelter in what used to be a school, its windows boarded, the chalkboard still covered with faded lessons. Straw mats lined the floor. The Red Cross provided thin blankets and a pot of watery stew. It was survival, nothing more. That night, Anna lay awake, the sounds of coughing and restless movement filling the darkness. She pulled her journal from her coat pocket and ran her fingers over its worn cover. Inside were the fragments of another world, her letters, her thoughts, her memories of the camp. One page still smelled faintly of soap and paper, the one Jimmy had given her. She read it silently, tracing each word like a prayer. Maybe kindness is a language no one taught us before. Helga stirred beside her. "You're still writing?" "Yes," Anna said. "If I stop, I might disappear." Helga sighed. "You think we'll ever be forgiven?" Anna hesitated. "By who?" "By anyone," Helga whispered. Anna didn't answer. Forgiveness felt too large a word for a world that had forgotten what mercy looked like. In the morning, she walked through the ruined streets, her steps slow, careful. Children played among rubble, chasing a tin can. A woman sold bread from a cart, her hands raw from kneading. Every face carried the same expression, exhaustion threaded with the stubborn will to live. She bought a small loaf with the last of her ration coupons. As she ate, the taste of warm bread brought tears to her eyes. It wasn't sweetness like the ice cream had been. It was something simpler, humbler, a reminder that life could still begin again. She found a photograph nailed to a wall half burned, a family standing in front of their house, smiling. She touched the image gently as if it might answer. Back at the shelter, Helga was packing her few belongings. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she said. "My cousin lives near Dresden. You?" Anna looked toward the window, where sunlight tried to pierce through dust. "I'll stay a little longer. There's work here, children who need to learn. Maybe I can teach." Helga managed a small smile. "Always trying to fix what's broken." "Someone has to start," Anna replied. When night came, the city outside was quiet, except for the wind passing through the ruins. Anna opened her journal again and wrote, "War ends, but its echo lingers. Still, somewhere in that echo I hear the sound of beginning." The first post-war winter came hard and grey. Snow fell over the ruins, covering them like an apology too late to matter. Anna moved through the rebuilt streets of Nuremberg, her breath clouding the air as she carried a stack of worn notebooks toward the small schoolhouse where she now worked. It had taken months to open, months more to fill it with children whose eyes held the kind of wisdom no child should have. She taught them letters, numbers, and bits of English, the same language she once struggled to understand inside the camp. The irony was not lost on her. When she wrote "freedom" on the chalkboard for the first time, her hand trembled. The children repeated the words softly, their voices uncertain but pure. At night she lived in a single rented room above a bakery. The scent of bread reminded her of survival, of days when even warmth felt like a gift. She still kept her old journal on the table beside her bed, though she hadn't written in it for months. Sometimes, when loneliness pressed too close, she'd open it just to see the faded ink, the life that existed between surrender and homecoming. Helga wrote her once, a short letter from Dresden. "We live." That is all, it said. Anna read it many times, each repetition a quiet affirmation. Life went on, even in fragments. The city changed slowly. Walls rose where ashes had been, markets reopened, and laughter began to return in cautious whispers. Yet beneath it all lay a silence that no reconstruction could hide. People avoided speaking of the war, of what they'd done, or lost, or believed. The unspoken hung heavier than smoke. One afternoon, a colleague asked, "How did you learn English so well?" Anna hesitated. "From a soldier," she said finally. "He was patient." The woman smiled. "A good teacher, then?" "Yes," Anna said softly. "Better than he knew." That evening, after the children had gone, she stayed behind to tidy the classroom. The low sun filtered through cracked glass, turning dust into gold. On the wall she pinned drawings her students had made: houses, trees, bright skies. None of them had drawn fences. She lingered by the window, listening to the faint hum of the city. Somewhere down the street someone played a harmonica. The melody was American. It made her heart tighten, not from pain, but memory. Back in her room she lit a candle and finally opened her journal again. The pages smelled faintly of earth and time. She wrote slowly, each word deliberate. Years pass, and silence grows heavy. Yet I teach their language because it reminds me that kindness once crossed an impossible border. I cannot speak of it, but I live by it. She paused, letting the candlelight flicker across the words. Outside, snow began to fall again, muffling the sounds of the street. Children's laughter drifted faintly upward, mingling with the rhythm of the winter wind. Anna closed the journal, her fingers resting on its cover. Some stories, she realized, weren't meant to be told aloud. They were meant to be lived quietly, folded into the days that followed. She blew out the candle, and the room went dark, filled only with the soft, enduring silence of survival. It was 1978, more than 30 years since the war ended, and the city of Frankfurt pulsed with a life Anna could barely recognize. Glass towers glimmered where ruins once stood. Streets hummed with foreign cars and languages she had taught children long ago. Yet as she walked through the exhibition hall that afternoon, time folded inward, bringing the past back with every photograph she passed. The exhibit was titled Captivity and Compassion, POW Camps in the West. Rows of black and white images lined the walls. Faces, fences, letters, moments caught between surrender and mercy. Anna's steps slowed when she saw one photograph near the corner. It showed a group of women standing in a campyard, sunlight spilling over them like forgiveness. In the foreground, a soldier handed a paper cup to a young woman with cautious eyes. Her own eyes. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The caption read, "Female German prisoners 1945, U.S. camp in southern England." She reached out, her fingertips hovering just short of the glass. In that frozen instant, she was back there. The heat of the day, the shock of sweetness, the question whispered into the air, "Do they know we're prisoners?" "Beautiful photograph," said a voice beside her. Anna turned. An elderly man stood there, his hair white, his uniform long gone, but his posture still military. He wore a small visitor badge, James Harlan. Her heart jolted. "Jimmy," she breathed, the name barely sound. He blinked, then looked closer. "Anna Müller?" Neither moved for several seconds. The distance of decades hung between them, years of silence, rebuilding, living separate lives. Then he smiled, soft and incredulous. "I never thought I'd see you again." "Nor I," she said, her voice trembling. "I wasn't sure you were even real anymore." He chuckled quietly. "I wasn't sure I was either." They walked together along the photographs, slow, careful, speaking in half-sentences that carried whole lives behind them. He told her he'd gone home, married once, taught history at a small college before retiring. She told him about her students, the years of teaching, the silence she had kept. When they reached the end of the exhibit, he said, "You kept your promise." "What promise?" she asked. "You said once that kindness might survive the war. I didn't believe you then." He smiled faintly. "I do now." Anna felt tears blur her sight. "I wrote a book," she said. "It's not yet published. It's called Do They Know We're Prisoners?" Jimmy nodded slowly, emotion thick in his voice. "They'll know now." They sat on a bench near the exit, talking until the hall emptied around them. Outside, evening light glowed against the glass walls, warm and forgiving. For the first time in decades, Anna spoke freely of the camp, of fear, of the strange grace that had lived inside captivity. He listened without interruption, his eyes steady, kind as she remembered. When it was time to part, he said simply, "It was good to see you, Anna." She smiled through her tears. It was good to be seen. As he walked away, she felt the years settle gently around her, not heavy, but whole. The photograph remained behind glass, untouched, but its story had come full circle. For those who still seek humanity in history, remember to subscribe and keep exploring the untold stories that reveal how mercy endures even in the darkest chapters. And before you leave, click the video on your screen, The Soldier Who Shared His Bread with the Enemy. Another story of quiet courage waiting to be remembered.